Come on in, my friends. We're about to get started. We're about 1 minute out now from starting our Happynomics webinar. Are you ready for this? This is graduate level psychology. For those of you who are here live, I've got the Q&A turned on. So please use the Q&A if you have questions that come up. For those of you, some of you are watching live stream on YouTube. Feel free to comment there in the comments on YouTube. I won't be tracking that during the seminar, but I will get back to that later and try to answer all the questions that come up. Again, for those of you who are live here in the Zoom room, use the Q&A, check in with me, let me know what your questions are as we get started. And it's time, so let's get the record button started. And we're off to the races. Here we go. Welcome, welcome, welcome to Happynomics. How serving others is actually the key to our own success. I am Dr. Paul Jenkins. I am a professional psychologist. And there are a lot of reasons why I'm here. I want to first ask, why are you here? What brings you here today? Now, a lot of different people are interested in the Happynomics concept. Therapists, for example, or coaches, people who want to help others in their career. Parents are a big part of our community here as well. Anyone who really feels called, and this is a common element that I've heard from you as you've responded to my emails and from others who have attended this webinar in the past. They feel called. Can you connect to that? Like there's some higher purpose for what you do, for your skill sets and how you can make a difference in this world. I invite you to consider, why are you here? And as you get introduced today to a model that I think is absolutely powerful, I would invite you to lean in a little bit. So here's how to participate in this web class today. Be ready to take some notes. Do you have your notes ready? And I wouldn't say take notes on what I say. If for everyone who's registered for this webinar, you get access to the recording afterwards. If you're watching on YouTube, well, you can get access to the live stream afterwards as well. It'll be there as a post. So I'm not concerned about you taking notes about what I say. What I would invite you to take notes about is what you think and feel inspired to do as a result of your participation here today. That is far more important. So would you do that? And as you consider why you're here, remember also that this is not only about you. There's a lot of good reasons why you're here. And I think we can meet some of your objectives if you'll lean in and pay attention to what your own mind tells you as I share these powerful models with you. You're also here for others, for people that you love and people that you serve. Please allow them to come into your mind as well as we have this conversation today. And I think you're going to see ways that it can serve and bless their lives as well. So are you ready? Let's jump in. I would love to share with you, first off here, a little more about why I'm here. So as I pull my slides back up, come back with me to a time several years ago when I got to meet this man. This is a colleague of mine, Dr. Jeff McGee. He is a brilliant consulting psychologist. He teaches principles of leadership and professional development and is just a leader in the field. And I had an opportunity to attend an event with Dr. Jeff McGee where I got to have dinner with him. It was just me and him, about 4 other people at our round dinner table at this event. Now, I should give you just a little more context about how I even got there in the first place. When you read my book, Pathological Positivity, you see that the first chapter is titled Lightning Strikes. And I wasn't literally struck by lightning, but it was one of those thunderous bolts of lightning that show up in our lives sometime. You know how you're just going along, expecting life to go a certain way, and then boom, just out of nowhere, something takes your feet out from under you. You're struck. And for me, it was an economic crisis. At the time, I had a busy outpatient psychotherapy practice. I was booked from dawn till dusk. You couldn't even get an appointment with me in weeks. And I had negative cash flow for 2 quarters in a row. Now, I don't know what kind of math you do, but in most accounting systems, that's not sustainable. And I was going downhill fast. Just to get to the event was a stretch for me. It was in Lake Tahoe, Nevada. I had to figure out how to get myself there, pay for the fees of the conference, get a hotel room, all of the travel costs, and I was going downhill fast economically. But I knew that if I got in the room, and think about what this means for you, because when you get yourself in the room where the resources and the people and the mentors and the teachers are there, that you will receive what you need next. I really believe this. And I believed it when I stretched to get myself to that event. So I'm sitting at the table with Dr. Jeff McGee. Let me pull his picture back up so that you can follow right along with me. And I'm sharing with him what's going on in my practice, right? I have this negative cash flow situation. Not sure how I can work anymore. Well, he listens very compassionately and he's leaning forward on the table. And after I finish telling him what's going on, he gets a look very similar to the one that you see here in this image of him. And he says, "Paul, you suck." And I'm like, "Thank you very much. I love you too." And he says, "No, I mean that in the most supportive way possible. As evidenced by your financials, you suck resources. You are consuming more than you produce." That really stuck with me. And I wasn't sure exactly what to do with it yet, but I knew that that had to be part of my answer. At that same event, I was introduced to another wise mentor and teacher. You know, when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. This is Lisa Nichols, a fabulous motivational speaker and someone who opened my eyes to something at that same conference. What she helped me to see through some imagery experiences that she walked us through was that it's not about me. It's not about me. It's about the people that I can serve when I get out of my own way. And I was starting to really understand, yeah, I'm kind of in my own way here. But Lisa's inspiring presentation really sunk deep into my heart and mind. I remember getting tearful about realizing this isn't about me. Sure, figuring things out is going to help me. It will make my life better, but it's not about me. It's about the people whose lives are blessed when I show up with the gifts and talents and resources that I can offer. And I appreciate Lisa so much for that. The conference just kept getting better for me as I got to meet Mary Louise Zeller, who has since become a dear friend and mentor to me. In her 80s, she's in her 80s now. Mary Louise is a 6th degree black belt in Taekwondo. This grandma can kick you the next Thursday. And what an inspiring story she has. Here's what Mary Louise did for me. She said, and this was a couple of months after the conference, I'd gotten to know her, and I invited her to be a guest on my podcast, Live on Purpose Radio. And over the microphone, as she's talking to me, and she knew a little bit about my situation too, she said to me, Paul, the troops aren't coming. And then she let that sink in for a minute and followed it with this: we are the troops. She might as well have kicked me. I'm glad she didn't. That would have really hurt. But she kick-started me into some new way of thinking. I think this was the first time really that I realized, with Mary Louise's help, that I was in victim mode. Are you familiar with victim mode? I'm not talking about a victim of crime or a victim of abuse. I'm talking about a victim mode of our mind. It's a victim paradigm. In victim mode, we're always blaming. And I saw that I was doing that when Mary Louise said the troops aren't coming. Because when you're blaming, and I was blaming my business partner, I was blaming the economy, I was blaming the insurance companies who don't compensate psychologists well enough. See, these were the stories I had in my head. Blame, blame, blame. And as long as I'm blaming, my hands are pointing. Have you ever done this? I hope I'm not the only one. When you're out driving, you're driving your car, you get lost in your thoughts, you go right past your exit. Have you done this before? I remember a time I was going to see a client in southern Utah, and I knew I had missed my exit when I saw the big colorful sign: Arizona welcomes you. Arizona? I not only missed my exit, I missed the whole state. And then I look down, and guess whose hands I see on my steering wheel? See, this bites a little when our eyes are open and we see that it's us. I'm driving this. The troops aren't coming. Who's going to save me from what I just created? And so you have to swallow hard. Okay, I'm here because I drove here. But the bad news is also the good news, because if my hands are on the wheel, what can I do next? Yes, drive it, steer it. See, if my hands are pointing, they're not on the wheel. If they're on the wheel, they're not pointing. And Mary Louise helped to open my eyes to that in a powerful way that I hadn't even really realized before. There's a couple others that I want to share with you still. Well, and I could tell you more stories about each of these coaches and mentors and heroes in my life. The next one is Les McGuire. Les was my financial advisor at the time. And he saw what I was going through, and he knew exactly what needed to happen. As he told me that, he said this to me. He said, Paul, you've got to create more value for more people. And I was a little offended. I'm doing good work. My clients appreciate me. I'm saving and enriching key relationships. And Les said, yeah, I know. You're doing good work. I'm not arguing with that at all. The economic answer for you is to create more value for more people. I wasn't even sure exactly what that meant, but it was at that time in my career that I made a big decision. And the big decision was to leave the tribe of traditional psychotherapy and enter the world of positive psychology coaching. And I'm going to share with you at the end of this webinar how you can become a certified positivity practitioner. When you attend a free webinar, there's going to be a pitch. And yes, I'm going to offer something to you. If it's not a good fit for you, then it's not for you. It's not for everybody. But if it is for you, listen very carefully. Because this is the shift. When I moved over to positive psychology coaching, things started to change dramatically for me for a lot of reasons that I'm not going to share right now. But let's fast forward a few years. So now we're at October 2017. I'm sitting in a Bravenel hall, and this question is asked of Dr. Sanjay Gupta. What is the most disturbing thing you have ever encountered? I would throw that question out to you. Just consider that for a minute. What is the most disturbing thing you have ever encountered? I'm in the audience as this brilliant neurosurgeon and correspondent for CNN is sharing his brilliance with us after having been that very morning on the island of Puerto Rico, where a devastating hurricane had come through. This is what he does. CNN sends him into war zones and earthquakes and hurricanes and natural disasters so he can report back on health-related issues. And that was his question. He didn't even hesitate. He said, it's the unnecessary death. And then he clarified. He said, I know people are going to die in a hurricane. We get that. And my heart goes out to those who are affected by this right now as we speak. But the tragic thing to Dr. Gupta was all the people who perish after the fact because they don't have access to food, water, medical supplies, the things that they need to survive. And the disturbing part, all of those resources exist in containers, on ships, in the port, on the island. But there's no distribution process to get it to the people who so desperately need it. That hit me hard. I've spent 30 years now developing models of positive psychology that save lives. And I mean that very literally. I know lives that were saved. And at the very least, they save and enrich our 7 key relationships. I know this. What is the distribution process to get those principles to the people who so desperately need it? And it was that same month, October of 2017, where I launched Live on Purpose TV. This is my YouTube channel. Some of you are watching right now, live streamed on Live on Purpose TV. That's when I launched, because it becomes a distribution channel. The reason that you and I are having this conversation today is because you are a distribution channel for life-saving principles, for relationship-saving principles. And if I can assist you to not only understand those principles in a way that can powerfully change your own life, but to apply those principles then in the way that you help and serve and bless and lift and elevate your fellow human beings, then we've just put in the distribution channels. Now, that's why I'm here. I want to be very clear about that is why I'm here. And if you feel called to be one of those distribution channels in the work that you do, and if I can empower you to do that, then together we're going to save some lives and relationships. I'm at a point in my career where that's what matters to me. There used to be other things that I got all uptight about earlier in my career. I'm not there anymore. And I am here to certify and support and train and mentor positivity practitioners in whatever context that means for you. Are you a parent? Are you a coach? Are you a counselor? Are you a leader? What is your role as it pertains to being a positivity practitioner? I don't know. Keep thinking about that, and I'll give you some resources here in a bit. But the next thing that I want to share with you, as we go back to the slides. Oh, and before, I move on to the model that we came here for today, the Happynomics model. I've shared with you only a few of my brilliant mentors and coaches and teachers. It was a stretch for me to get in the room with them. And I thank myself, I thank my previous self every day for being courageous enough to stretch, handle the considerations, and get myself in the room. At the same time I was going through that economic challenge, a friend of mine gave me a book, The Richest Man in Babylon by George Clason. And he knew what I was going through economically. And this book helped me tremendously. One of the things that I learned in that book was that a part of everything you make is yours to keep. And I remember thinking this. I'll share with you my exact thought. I'm listening to the audiobook and I think, oh yeah, that's a great idea. Because I'm paying the bills that I can, but I'm not paying me anything. It's all going out to the wolves that are howling at the door, right? And I thought this, as soon as I'm doing a little better financially, I'm going to follow that advice. Did you hear it before I did? Listen to how prideful that is. Basically, I'm saying, oh, look, Mr. Clason, wise guru who wrote this book, I'm going to figure out through my own staggering brilliance how I'm going to do better financially. And then, oh, wise financial guru, I will follow your advice. One of my other clients told me this. He says there's two kinds of people in this world. And I'm a psychologist. Tell me, I'd like to know. He said there are those who are humble and those who are about to be. Can you relate to that? I think that our circumstances are there in part to humble us enough to listen to people who have reasons to know. And my circumstances that had humbled me to the point where I was able to allow into my life wise teachers, coaches, gurus, those who had reasons to know. And it has made all the difference. It required that I got out of my own way and stretched and handled the considerations. I'll come back to that in a little bit too. But let's move on. I want to introduce you now to what I consider to be graduate level psychology, graduate level positive psychology. This is a model called Happynomics, and it starts with a basic structure that I learned from Robert Kiyosaki. You might recognize that name as a best-selling author of personal finance, including the book Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And Kiyosaki taught that to understand personal finance, this is the economic side of Happynomics, okay? We have to understand these two basic documents. There's your income statement, which lists your income and your expenses. And there is your balance sheet, where you will list your assets and your liabilities. He also defined assets as something that puts money into your pocket. It creates income. Liabilities create expenses. And then what is an example of this? Let's take a property, for example. Okay, so you buy an apartment building or a duplex or whatever as an investment property. I'm not talking about your own home right now. There's some complicating factors there because it doesn't really put income into your pocket. But let's look at an investment property that you obtained. Well, you didn't just buy it. You had to go get a loan, right? A mortgage on that property. So the property is the asset. The loan is the liability. And every month, as long as you've got tenants, they move into your property, they pay you rent. This is income. And every month, the bank expects a payment from you toward that loan. So income is rent, payment is expense. All right, this is pretty simple, right? So what's our goal? We really want to have more income than expense. Listen to me, because this is coming from a guy who went through a bankruptcy, okay? I had negative cash flow for 2 quarters in a row. You can't sustain that. Income has to exceed expense. We call that profit, or at least I don't mean it has to. This is our goal, right? That's what we want to go for, having more income than expense. What if it's the other way around, like it was for me? If your expense is greater than your income, that leaves you in a deficit or a loss. Okay. Now go down to the balance sheet. What's our goal down there? You want to have your assets be greater than your liabilities. We call that condition equity. Now, stay with me. I know we're getting into economics, but this has everything to do with you as a human being, and that's coming next. What if it's the other way around? If your liabilities are greater than your assets, that's called debt. You're upside down, basically. It's you owe more than it's worth. All right? So keep this in mind. Screenshot this page if you want to remember what our goals are financially. But we're not here to talk about economics. We're talking about Happynomics, which has to do with a different kind of value. Now, to introduce this, I'm going to share with you something that one of my mentors, Les McGuire, I showed you a picture of him earlier, he suggested to me that I read or at least reference a book called The Economics of Life Insurance. Sound engaging? By Solomon Huebner. This is a book that was written 100 years ago. And Solomon Huebner is the guy who basically founded modern life insurance the way that we understand it nowadays. And I found what I needed on page 5, so I didn't have to go very far. Sol Huebner said this: in every society, there are two kinds of value. There's the property value, meaning, property, money, what we traditionally think of. There's the property value, and there's the human life value. And of the two, the human life value is by far the more valuable and is in fact the source, parentheses, creator of, all property value. Human life value is the source and creator of all property value. So this brings up a question: what is human life value? Let's go back to Robert Kiyosaki's model, because I think it's a useful way to think about value. We've already gone over property value. Let's now look at human life value. This is the value that exists inside of you as a human being, and I think this is true of every human being on the planet. You have strengths, don't you? And you have weaknesses. Have you noticed? You have knowledge, you know things, and you have ignorance. You've got both, right? You have abilities, you also have disabilities. You have this amazing life and body. That's an asset. And that body is mortal, which is a liability. And spoiler alert, nobody gets out of this alive. So we've got both sides. I feel like I need to just jump out here for another second, because what is our goal with our liabilities? Think about your investment property. What's the goal with the liability? Well, you want to pay it down, right? Yeah, okay. So what if you pay off the loan? Do you no longer have a liability on that property? See, there's always a liability. Even if you pay off the loan, you've got more, or you've got taxes and upkeep and maintenance, and it's basically called stewardship. Your responsibility to take care of any asset is a liability. Okay, so it's not our goal to eliminate our liabilities. I don't think we can. And just check in with your life experience and see if that is true. How are you doing on your weaknesses? And now, you can make improvements, right? You can learn, you can grow, you can gain strength. Yes, and you still have weaknesses. Welcome to Earth. There you go, being a human again. It's how we're designed. So our goal is not to get rid of our liabilities. Our goal is to pay our expenses. So we need to go to the income statement next as we talk about expenses and income. Here we go. All right, now this is where it gets really fun because up to this point, people are pretty much on board. And just check in where you are with this. Yeah, I got strengths. Yes, I have weaknesses. There's this opposition, right? When we get to the income statement, it gets tricky. So remember, assets create income. Liabilities create expenses. So play along with me, if you will. Those of you who are here live in the Zoom room, and you can play along on YouTube too, go to the chat. All right, there's a chat button here on Zoom. Do you find it? Okay, now, and I'm going to open mine so I can see what we come up with here. This is going to be fun. Fun for me. That's the important thing, right? Yeah, I want it to be fun for you too. Okay, if you are here live, please play along. I'm going to share with you several human activities that are either income or expense. And we're just going to see where you are with this. So type into the chat and don't hit enter. I just want you to put it into the chat and then I'll count you down. 3, 2, 1, and then you'll hit enter and we'll see everybody's answer at the same time. Okay, you got it? And you're just going to enter income or expense. You can just do an I or an E. Income or expense. Okay, so let's start. And if you're on YouTube, I wonder if I can get that screen up too and see what you guys are saying. Yes, I found you. I did. Nope, I lost you. Hang on. I know it's here somewhere. I saw you earlier. Well, it's disappeared. Okay, I'm not going to be able to track you on YouTube, but those of you who are here live in Zoom, we'll just go with that group. Okay, here we go. Ready? Oh, there it is. I think I found you. Okay, awesome. Here we go. Learning. All right, this is my favorite. Now, don't hit enter. Just put it in the chat, income or expense. This is one of my favorite activities. I love to learn new material. Okay, learning, education. All right, is that income or expense? In 3, 2, 1, go. I and E, expense, income. Okay, we have a little bit of a mixed result here. How about on YouTube? Income, expense, income. We don't have a lot of agreement here, you guys. Okay, let's look at what it actually is, all right? And whatever you answered is just fine. Where does it come from? Or what gives rise to or the need for learning? It's our ignorance. Learning is expense. Okay, that surprises some of you. Teaching would be income. Now, why? Because it comes from your knowledge. All right, let's try another one. How about serving others? Now go to the chat again. Don't hit enter yet. Serving others, income or expense. In 3, 2, 1, go. Income. Okay, now we're catching on. Serving others is income. Why? Because it comes from your assets. You're able to serve others because of your strength, your knowledge, your abilities, your skills. Okay, being served would be expense. Now, here's a tricky one. Go to the chat again. Type it in. Don't hit enter until I count you down. Consuming, including receiving. Consuming, income or expense. In 3, 2, 1, go. Expense, income, expense. Income, expense. Okay, we got a little disagreement still. Consuming is expense. Those of you who said expense, you got it right. Why? And this feels a little backwards, right? It feels a little backwards. Producing is income, including giving. Now, let's just address that for a minute. Because I can see, I got two computers running here. I can see that it feels backwards. It did to me too, because we're giving. How is giving income and receiving is expense? It's because of where it comes from and the way that we're used to thinking about income and expense in property value. In property value, what is income? Money, right? And you receive money, it comes into you. But what happened just before you receive the money? You had human life value income. You gave, you served, you provided something, you produced value in terms of a service or a product. And then the income, the money comes into you as a receipt for the human life value income, which is the service. Value flows from you to others. That's income. And you get paid for it sometimes. Not always, right? Expense, same thing. When you have an expense in your property value, what leaves you? Money. Why would money ever leave you? Because you just received a product or a service, right? So the receiving is the expense and the money leaves you as a receipt for that expense. It's the money that's backwards. And when you think about it that way, it starts to make more sense. Let's go back to the model so that you can see it all together. Right here. Okay, so there's our model. Whoops, stay on this slide for just a minute. This is human life value. Now, it ties into Happynomics when we get to the goals, all right? Because just like in property value, we have some goals here. Do you remember when we talked about profit and loss and equity and debt? Let's start at the bottom of that list. In human life value, we want the same thing. We want our assets to outweigh our liabilities. If it's the other way around, that our liabilities outweigh our assets, it creates a condition called captivity. If our assets are greater than our liabilities, we call that liberty, which is synonymous with freedom. And the thing about human life value is you don't have to go buy your assets. They're part of you. And you can grow them and you can develop new assets, new knowledge, for example, new skills, new awareness. But in property value, you have to go buy assets. In human life value, they're part of you. So the only thing that determines whether you're in a state of liberty or captivity is your choice. You get to choose your position. For example, do you spend more time focusing on thinking about your weaknesses or your strengths? Okay, and you don't have to answer that, but just check in with that, okay? Do you spend more time and energy thinking about, focusing on what you can't do versus what you can do? What we focus on, we feel. What we think about comes about. You get to choose liberty or captivity based on your focus. Now let's look at our income statement. Same goal, to have more profit or more income than expense. Because if our expenses outweigh our income or outpace our income, we suck, right? Just like I did. Dr. Jeff McGee told me that. In human life value, when we consume more than we produce, we are in a state of misery. This is the negative flow of human life value. When we serve more than we're being served, when we produce more than we consume, when there's more income than expense, that is the positive flow of human life. And we call that happiness. That's why I call this model Happynomics. And I've run through it fairly quickly. Okay, it took me several years to really wrap my head around this, but I've shared with you the essential elements of Happynomics. What does this mean for you? Let's look at a typical day. You wake up first thing in the morning. Where are you physically? You're in bed. What have you been doing? You've been sleeping. Sleeping. Income or expense? Hopefully you're getting a little better at this now. It is expense. Why? Look, here's the shortcut. Anything you do to take care of or be responsible for your number one asset, yourself, anything you do to benefit you is expense. I'm not saying don't do it. In fact, please pay your expenses. If you don't pay your expenses, you'll lose your assets because your liabilities will overwhelm you. Can you see that that's true in property value? What happens if you don't pay your mortgage? Your liability will overwhelm you and you'll lose your asset. I went through a bankruptcy. You don't have to go through a bankruptcy to learn that. Please pay your expenses. How are we going to pay our expenses? We got to have some income, right? So you wake up in the morning, you've been sleeping, that's expense. What do you do next? You go to the bathroom, you get ready for the day. Expense, right? You're still taking care of number one. Then what? Get some breakfast. Okay, eating. Expense or income? Expense. It's been an expensive morning. Oh, here's one. How about feeding your children breakfast? Ooh, who are you serving now? Because anything you do to serve others, whether you get paid for it or not, anything you do to serve others is human life value income. So we just got some income, right? How awesome is that? Now, here's a tricky one. Going to work. Now, let's be clear. Work is, by definition, income. All right? It's human life value income because you're using your strength and your abilities to actually go out there and do work, right? But going to work, what your job, okay, the way you engage every day, is that income or expense? It depends. Now, some people say both. It's not both. It's one or the other. And it depends on who is being served. If you are going to work to take care of number one, it's expense, even though you get a paycheck. Now, this is why it's a little confusing, but it's human life value expense. And because of that, you're going to have some offsetting income somewhere where you're serving someone else. What if you show up to your job? This is a change you can make today. What if you show up to your job to serve the company you work for, the clients and customers that are lining up for that service? What if your heart and your mind is in serving them? Then it's income. And you still get the paycheck. But I've found that those who go to work as an expense, just to take care of themselves, don't retain the job. Either they're fired or they leave. And that's pretty consistent, okay? And the thing is, you can switch your reason for doing whatever you're doing, and it can become income to you. When people get really good at Happynomics, they get really good at economics. Okay, when you get this, you get that. And there's a lot of reasons for that. Okay, so look at your day and how much you're engaging in income versus expense. We've got the same goals. I'll pull them up again so that you can see them. We've got the same goals that we've had all along. To have more income than expense, that creates happiness, the positive flow of human life. And to have more asset value than liability value, and that has to do with your focus. What you focus on, you feel. What you think about comes about. This is a powerful way to take charge over our own thinking, and either we drive our own thinking or our thinking drives us. All right, I know we were moving fast through that. There's more where this came from, okay? And like I said, you don't have to memorize all of this. Jot down notes about what it means for you. Because like when I got myself in that room with Jeff McGee and Mary Louise Zeller, and I've put myself in many rooms since then, knowing that when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. What is it that's occurring to you? That's what I want you to think about. Now imagine for a minute, if we can just shift gears. What if you had a resource that provided you the kind of support and knowledge and connections that would allow you to move powerfully forward with your positivity quest, whatever yours looks like? This, I told you I would be offering you something, and this is not for everyone, but I would invite you to ask, is this for me? And there's probably already some things that you've thought. Here's what we've put together for you. It's a program to become a certified positivity practitioner. You'll see a URL at the bottom, and that's where you'll find the offer. I'll tell you a little bit more about that as I share with you what this does for you. What this means for you is that you get to have credibility. Are you a trainer in your company? Are you a counselor or a therapist? Are you a coach? Are you a parent? Are you a leader? How would you do that even more powerfully if you had the credibility of being a certified positivity practitioner, where you would have license to use my models in your work? This means confidence for you. You've got this. You don't always feel like you have it. I know, because whatever you think generates those feelings. You would have the support, the training, the coaching, the masterminds that we do as part of this program, a platform for collaboration. And I've learned this powerfully because information is free. I haven't charged any of you a cent to be here in this webinar today. Information is free. I've got over 1,000 videos on YouTube. You can go Google or AI anything that you want. Containers are rare. And when you get yourself in the right rooms with the right people, you have a powerful platform for collaborating and moving forward with your mission. Everything that you need, basically, for your next steps. That's what is available to you. Now, therefore, what? I asked you earlier to commit to whatever is next for you. And this is not just about you, it's about the people that you love and serve. Just before people say yes, some people say it costs too much. They think it costs too much. I'm going to help you with that, okay? And I'll tell you exactly what it is that I'm offering and what the costs are in just a minute. But I think it's also important to look at, what does it cost to stay where you are? And for me, that was a more powerful motivator. I had to find a way to handle the considerations to get myself in the room. And some of the rooms that I've talked about here, whatever your room is that you get to go to next. Or that they don't have the time. That's always a lie. I was doing a training with one of our certification groups just yesterday, and this came up. I don't have time to do everything that I want to do. You have 24 hours a day. What if I gave you $1 million? But the catch is you have to spend it today. And don't worry, whatever you don't spend, you lose. But I'll give you another $1 million tomorrow. That's what time is. You have to spend it all today. And you do spend all of your time, and you've got exactly the same amount as Bill Gates or Dr. Paul or anyone else. Okay, so it's just a question of how we spend it. And I appreciate what Hiram Smith said this. He's one of the founders of Franklin Covey, you know, the people who made the old day planners. And he said, when your activities, the way you spend your time, matches your core values, you have a right to inner peace. And I love that, because a lot of times we spend our time on things that ultimately we don't value as much, or that they've tried everything and it hasn't worked. That's not even possible. You haven't tried everything yet. So I invite you to look at your thinking around this, and we can overcome whatever considerations come up for us. What would it be like to be part of that community and to get that kind of support? Now, I'll come back to that. Somebody remind me to talk about handling the considerations. The package includes a 3-day intensive training with me personally. Now, you're not going to have to get on a plane or go anywhere. It's all virtual. It is live. So I want you to plan as if you are going to be there in the room. Okay, this is not the kind of a Zoom virtual event where you can just listen in while you do something else. You will be engaged and active for the entire time. The next one that we have planned is November 13th through the 15th. And if you're catching a recording of this, and we've already passed that, then go to positivitypractitioner.com. You'll see whatever our next dates are. You get licensed to use all of my models, and I have 4 specific ones that you will have licensed to use in whatever your work is. That will include full access for a full year. And we are getting together every month for training calls, for coaching calls. You're going to have a mastermind group and all of the mentoring, peer support, collaboration that you need to move forward. And I'm also offering all of our practitioners 5 seats to Live on Purpose Central. This is a membership that I sell for $97 a month. You get 5 memberships that you can gift or sell or grant to anyone you choose for as long as you're an active positivity practitioner. So that's all part of your package. The value of that exceeds $15,000, especially with the licensing rights that you get to my models. Last year, we sold it for $4,500, and we have dropped that price to make it more accessible so that you can get it for just under $3,000. That's US dollars, by the way, for those of you who are joining us from other countries. And here's the infomercial part of it. But wait, there's more. We're going to take off an additional $500 for a limited time. That's why the URL at the bottom of the screen says early bird. All right. And there will be a counter there. When you go to positivitypractitioner.com/earlybird, you'll see that there's a countdown. And there's, at the time that we're doing this live webinar, you've got about 2 days left to get in on this. $500 off your tuition. That's $24.97. It includes everything that I just shared with you. And I am personally prepared for anyone who signs up now, meaning in the next 15 minutes. This is an action taker's gift, because I've found that if we put things off, we keep putting things off. Can you relate? If you know this is for you, do it now. And I am prepared to spend a private one-on-one session with everyone who does that as a result of watching this webinar and being here live today. You've committed your time to be here. I'm going to reward your action taking with a private one-on-one deep dive session. Now, is that even valuable? I don't know. It depends on if you like me or not, I guess. I don't do private coaching anymore, except with a very exclusive, limited number of people who have joined my Positivity Artisans group. That's a step above the practitioners. And I do not have time on my calendar to do individual coaching anymore. I'm going to make an exception for anyone who wants to get in today. Okay. So if you feel this is for you, come on in. Let's take some of your questions. I've got the Q&A open here in the Zoom. For those of you who are here live and have some questions, go ahead and pop them into the Zoom and I will answer them. John is asking, is there going to be another date? The November date doesn't work for me. Okay, I'm going to give you my official answer and my gut feel answer, okay? The official answer is I don't know, because we don't have another one calendared. However, I am loving this. And the people who are coming through are loving it, and our community is growing and becoming stronger of positivity practitioners. It's my intention to do another one in the spring of 2025. There is no date for that. So, John, the official answer is, I don't know. The unofficial answer is, yeah, probably in the spring. But here's the thing. Can I just take a moment to address that? And Kirk, this is going to address your question as well, because Kirk is saying we've got some family activities already planned for that time, and I would need to find out how to pay for it. Okay, let me just address that, and I promised you I'd do this earlier. There's a difference between being interested and being committed. All right. And I would invite all of you to just consider, how committed am I to moving forward powerfully to that next stage of whatever my calling is? And I don't mean my calling, I mean your calling. I'm speaking for you, right? How committed are you? And if you were to put that on a scale of 1 to 10, so 1 is not very, and 10 is I'm in 100%. Where are you on that scale? And Kirk, I don't know if you can go back and list what it is. Okay, 9. So you put a 9 in there. Huh. All right. I only work with 10s. And I'll just be very upfront about that. And when I say that, sometimes people are like, wait, I kind of want to do that. I'm a 10. I just don't know how I'm going to. All right. There's being interested and being committed. If you're interested, just own it. Say, yeah, that's really interesting. It's not for me. If you are committed, then you handle the considerations. And Kirk, what you're bringing up in your question comes down to handling the considerations. Let me just tell you a quick story about that, because when I was going through all of my challenges, and I told you I got myself to Lake Tahoe, and I find out there's a part 2 to this training. And I'm like, this was life-changing for me. I really want to do part 2. Okay. I had some financial issues, obviously, but also part 2 was going to happen over 3 days when I had 12 paying clients scheduled. I was giving a keynote. I was the keynote speaker for a leadership luncheon for 40 business leaders. That was happening during that same time. It was my son's 18th birthday during that time, and I had a subpoenaed appearance in court where I was the main witness in a child custody case. I can't go, right? And my coach at the time helped me with this. She said, Paul, if this were your mother's funeral, would you show up? And I had a whole different thought process about that because none of those things that I just said, those considerations would keep me from my mother's funeral. And thankfully, my mother is still alive and well. She's in her 80s and she's just cute. She's awesome. But nothing would keep me away, right? Why? Because I'm committed. I'm not interested, I'm committed. And that's why I invite you to ask yourself, how committed am I? If you are committed, then you handle the considerations. And oh, Kirk's changed. Oh, I'm actually a 10. I'm just handling consideration. Beautiful. Beautiful. Because if you're committed, you'll handle the considerations. I handled all four of those because that loving coach helped me to see that I was getting in my own way by saying, well, I can't because. And you might be curious, how do you handle getting out of those four things? I didn't get out of it. I handled the considerations. 12 clients, that's easy. If I'm working with you and I call you and I say, hey, I'm going to be out of town, could we reschedule? What are you going to say? Every one of them said yes, of course, we'll support you in this. Right? I called the man that had asked me to do the keynote for the business leaders. I said, I'm not going to be around. And the only way I feel good about this is I'm going to provide you a speaker that's better than me. How does that sound? He said, well, I don't know if that's going to happen. I said, trust me, you're going to love him. And I called one of my friends, Brett Harward. He's the author of the 5 laws that determine all of life's outcomes. And he's an excellent speaker. I met him at the same conference, by the way. And he did a fabulous job. And I got to go back and do another presentation later for the same guy. Handled, right? What about my son's birthday? You cannot reschedule your son's 18th birthday, or can you? See, it opened up my mind. What am I going to do? So I went to my son. I said, I'm going to be out of town, and that's not okay with me unless you and I come up with something that we're going to do that would be better than whatever we're going to do if I were to stay here. How does that sound to you? His eyes get kind of wide and he's like, yeah, challenge accepted. And we ended up going snorkeling in the desert of Utah. I know, whole other story. But we saw tropical fish and sharks and stingrays, and it was awesome. We never would have had that experience if I'd not handled the considerations. What about a subpoenaed court appearance? You can't get out of that. You know what happens if you don't comply with the subpoena? You go to jail. The sheriff shows up and hauls you off to the county bed and breakfast. But I handled it. I called the court. I said, I'm really sorry. I'm not available. I called the attorney first who subpoenaed me, and the attorney said, well, you have to be there. You're subpoenaed. You know what happens if you don't, gave me the whole story. And I'm like, I know. And yet here we are. And so he said, well, you're going to have to work that out with the court. So I called the court. The court was happy to reschedule. Said, yeah, we'll send a notice out to all the attorneys. We'll get another date on the calendar. Huh. And all along my brain was telling me I can't because, look, ask yourself instead, how can I? Because once you say I can't, what's the next step? There isn't one. It's like when Mary Louise Zeller told me the troops aren't coming. And for the first time, I saw myself hunkered down in some dark corner, waiting for what? The economy? Those people I had invested with to pay me back? What was I waiting for? The industry to change? And I saw myself for the first time in that victim corner, and I wasn't okay with that. And I realized we are the troops. And I started moving forward with purpose. Right? Those guys who were going to pay me back, they promised they would as soon as they get out of prison. They're going to pay me back. Yeah, how long am I willing to wait? Right? But it's not about me. How many lives have been saved, literally saved lives, because I got out of my own victim corner? Handle the considerations. That's my invitation to you. And it doesn't have to be with me. You get yourself in the next room you need to be in with the people that you need to know. so that you can move powerfully forward with your mission. And it's different from mine. And if I get to be your coach, your guide, I am honored to serve that position. I've tried to make it affordable to you so that you can do it and handle those considerations. We do have payment options too, by the way. Even on the early bird price, you can break that down into 3 monthly payments. Just handle whatever considerations you've got. If it's right for you to be in that room, then I will love being in that room with you. I would be honored to fill that role for you. I think we've run out of time. We're a little past at the top of the hour, but if you have other questions, please reach out to me. I hope that you found this useful and helpful, and I really hope that you can become part of the distribution process. I believe that's who you are. If I can help you to get there, that's what I want to do. Awesome. Thank you for being here. I'm going to turn you loose for now. Those of you who registered, you will get a copy of the recording. If you're watching live streamed on YouTube, send me an email, info@drpauljenkins.com, info@drpauljenkins.com. We'll get you a copy of the recording. All right, you guys.